I hope you're ready for some news this week. So, our first article this week comes from Kotaku. This is a report, so keep in mind, take it with a grain of salt. Everything here might or might not be factual, but it is a report nonetheless. New Nintendo Switch with 4K output, OLED screen will release before Christmas by Luke Plunkett. And again, this comes from Kotaku. So guys, earlier this week, reports came out that Nintendo is working with Samsung on a 720p 7-inch OLED version of the Switch. Reports also indicate that the Switch will also get a resolution bump in dock mode with a 4K output instead of 1080p. I didn't really see this, but no other reports on if the quote-unquote Switch Pro will receive a boost in terms of performance, but it's likely due to because it is going to have 4K output, so it's going to have to have a little extra boost to do that. So what do we think? What do we think of a 4K Switch Pro?
I mean, this is what I want. I wanted Nintendo games in that full resolution because one thing that I love about gaming, and specifically abstract gaming and colorful gaming, is the fact that it pops whenever you see it on screen. Like, there's a game I was playing this week called MacKinnon. It looks gorgeous at 4K, and to have some games like Nintendo games specifically to be in that resolution and have the HDR possibilities as well, I'm ecstatic. I'm over the moon for it. Now, am I upset about it being able to be 720 on the go? No, I'm actually not, because it kind of makes sense. You're gonna have to make some You're gonna have to make some what is the word I'm even trying to think of? Sacrifices. You have to make some sacrifices to make this thing work on the go, because at the core of it, it is still an on-the-go platform. And the battery life on a 4K thing, it's probably going to burn the hell up. So for it to be still at a 720, I understand. I do love the fact that supposedly the screen is going to be bigger, 7-inch OLED. That sounds awesome. But yeah, I as someone who loves games that like Nintendo, I'm excited to see them at the highest resolution possible.
Sly, I know you bought a Switch. What do you think about this?
I mean, yeah, I managed to find a used Switch Lite for pretty cheap, so little bit of an impulse bought it, but I'm very excited that will hopefully come on Monday. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's great that technology is improving. I don't really care too much about having the newest and best thing, but I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people are very excited about this, especially people who have those OG 4-year-old Switches are probably looking for a little bit of an upgrade at this point. And yeah, 720p on the go is kind of iffy. Like, I know a lot of people were looking forward to 1080p at least. But, if you want to take it on the go, there has to be some sacrifices. And if you look at battery life versus resolution, it really depends on what your priority is, right?
Yeah.
So.
I do have something to say about the 720p thing, but we're going to go over to Harv here, because I know Harv had something to say about this as well.
I couldn't care about 4K.
Yes,
that's one of the things. I just could not care about 4K.
Friends, Harv.
I'm okay with 1080p as long as your game runs to 60 FPS. I'm happy.
Okay,
that's the main thing.
Okay.
So, I like that they're doing a Switch Pro, because I think they're like Mario said, the games are beautiful. Like, you look at like Zelda, you look at Mario, and you look at like Fire Emblem and all these games. They're beautiful games. And like seeing them in like a 1080p or a 4K, it'll make them pop a lot, right? Okay, before we keep going, I'm getting feedback from you, Sly. Sorry.
Yeah, from the
sorry. Yeah, sorry. I was like, how do I hear my voice still? What's happening right now?
I don't want to hear my own voice. I don't like my own voice.
I hate my own voice.
You host a podcast. How do you hate the sound of your own voice?
Hear it yourself.
I know. I mean, I have to when I edit it.
Oh yeah, true.
So yeah, when it comes to like the 4K, I'm like, it's whatever to me. But like, as long as we're getting 60 FPS for those games, I'll be really happy. 720p on the go is fine, because I rather have battery more battery than have like a smaller battery but with higher resolution, because it is on the go. Like Mario said, it is an on the go console. So I mean, this thing looks cool. It looks neat. I don't think I'm gonna upgrade my Switch. I think my Switch does its job right now, and I have a launch one. So I play my Switch once every year, maybe. So it's it is what it is right now.
And Fee, I know you had something to say too as well. And I swear to God, if it's about anime.
She just mutes
I'm
herself.
just joking.
She's just like backs away, like, okay, I guess there goes that.
There goes my argument, guys. No. I definitely understand the price point and why they're specifically cutting down the graphics. I think my only a little bit irritation about it is like things and saying this as someone like as my day job, I work in mobile. We see a lot of phones that are specifically around this particular price. Like, and it's not like we're not talking about flagship iPhones or Samsungs, but you're seeing like these kind of lower end phones being able to run 1080 and be able to play things like Genshin Online, which Genshin typically runs at about 1080p, and that's mobile on a cellular device with batteries that are around the same amount that you would probably be seeing on a Switch. I don't know in particular how strong the actual battery is going to be, and I understand kind of going from like if we want to be able to charge this new Switch at this particular price point, we have to find some way to kind of, like Mario said, make some sacrifices. But I think that the difference between 720 and 1080 on the Switch when you're playing isn't enough to be like, oh my God, I'm not going to buy this. Or, oh, I like F this console. Like, that's definitely not the case. Because you're seeing when it comes to handheld consoles, they're doing a fantastic job. But in comparison to their cousins, which is the cellular device or a tablet, you're looking at like a little bit of an issue there. But like I said, with the prices that they quote unquote think it's going to be, I can understand why they made that particular reduction in quality. Am I going to buy it? Probably, because I have the older version of the Switch and I love playing on my Switch when I can. And the accessibility to be able to move around and like not have to stay in one spot definitely feeds my I only have a 3-second attention span. So being able to move around my apartment or be able to do something while playing a game definitely piques my interest. But I can, like I said, I'm trying to be as understanding and realistic as I can be with this, but I'm a little bit bummed. But if they're expecting 4K on a mobile device, like on a handheld device, we're probably looking at a few years down the line. Just saying. If you want it to be at that price point, you're going to be looking at a few years down the line.
Got it.
Either it's going to be 4K or like faux 4K kind of type thing when
Like
it's going to be in
checkerboard.
handheld. Yeah,
Oh.
checkerboarded kind of type thing, like the
Yeah.
PS4 Pros and stuff did.
Like upscaled.
Yeah.
So on the resolution topic, because I thought it was pretty interesting about what Nintendo's doing here. So the OLED screen at 720p should look pretty crispy. I say this because me and Mario have used a PS Vita in the past, and the current Switch resolution right now.
I also had a Vita. What is this
Okay.
slander?
Sly also has a Vita as well, so you probably already know that those OG Vita screens were very crispy with games. They looked amazing. Those Vitas were running at 920 by 520p. So those are 520p displays. The Switch's current display output right now is 1280 by 720. So a OLED screen at 1280 by 720 will be very, very, very crispy in comparison to like what it's currently running right now. Mainly because you're just going to get a lot of more colors. You're going to get a lot more pixels on the screen in terms of like, in terms of brightness. You know what I mean? It's going to be a brighter, more livelier screen itself. You're not getting more pixels. I misspoke there, but I saw Fee's hand go up. Go ahead.
Okay. This might just be me being very picky,
Mhm.
but I like when I think of crispy, I think of like pixelated, like specifically like this looks like it could do better. But then
Yes.
there's crisp, which is like creme de la creme, looks fantastic. Like I'm specifically like just making hand gestures to be silly, but I I get what you mean, and I
Mhm.
personally owned a Vita as well, and I enjoyed it. And what you're talking about, the older version of the Vita, like, yeah, it looked crisp
Mhm.
at the time that it was released, but if you like, we're sitting in 2021, like, those particular graphics that you were looking at with the older Vitas, yeah, they looked great at that particular time, but I think there's definitely an area where they could have boosted it a little bit. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it was
And I see
my.
Harv's hands up.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Harv.
Oh, I was gonna ask. So the Vita started with OLED, but then it switched, right? That's
Switch
what
to
it was.
LCD. Yes.
Yeah, because of how expensive it was to
As
have
the
an OLED
price
screen.
as the price gone down, yeah.
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 So I think it dropped it at an additional $50 for the LCD version, and it was slimmer too as well, and the battery life
Okay.
was more.
I had both.
Okay.
They're very nice systems.
Yeah, because everybody was like raving about the OLED, right? Because it looks so much nicer than the LCD screen for it, right?
Yeah, there's a very noticeable difference in between them, and that comes from, I believe, and keep in mind I'm not a TV guy or anything like that, but I believe it comes from just how much lighting you can do within a OLED panel, and how the colors kind of can shift a little bit more. With an OLED screen, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but I would imagine that they're looking to add some kind of HDR to it as well. Especially if you're gonna have an OLED screen, you might as well have high dynamic range for some of your like undocked stuff and everything like that. The only thing I don't see working properly is the 4K stuff. Um, Nintendo's games are notorious for not having any anti-aliasing, and you can see it even in like the new Pokemon Arceus trailer. The grass looks very jagged. Character models look very jagged. It's very noticeable in 720p. It's a little bit less noticeable in 1080p, but I think it'll be a lot more noticeable in 4K. Have you guys noticed that in like any of the Nintendo? Keep in mind, this is just for Nintendo specific games.
I was gonna say, well, and I'm hoping I'm giving Nintendo the benefit of the doubt, even though I really shouldn't. They always find a way to backtrack and screw me. But in the same way where a lot of games today are getting those up-reses or those packs, hopefully at the very least they could do that, especially if they're going to run the same Switch games as before. So the games that do have those jagged edges, hopefully they get smoothed out with a patch that comes with the new game. So let's just say Breath of the Wild, right? A game that's been out for 4 years. Everyone, some people like the grass, some people don't like the grass. I like the grass. I think of a funny Twitter thing that we're going to do later. But yes, I think it'd be really interesting to see if they apply some texture packs to all their old titles and give them new life and makes me want to play them again. So also, I'm hoping this also then changes their philosophy when making games so that you don't have those issues like you said. So I think that with working with new resolutions, they hopefully have to be cognizant of what that's going to look like for their future, especially if there's going to be an FPS raise as well. We don't really know. I mean, I assume it's still going to be at 30. But hey, if I get to play Breath of the Wild 2 and 60, that'd be really great.
Mm-hmm. And that actually brings me up to the next topic I have on here too. Will a bump in resolution matter in a climate where companies are finally starting to realize that refresh rates for video games are very important? I know Harv was talking about 4K not really mattering to him. What do you guys think?
I say it does, but
yeah, I mean, I think companies are still doing. I think companies are still doing resolution over refresh rate now. I think it's only on the PC side we see it more when it comes to refresh rate. But I think if you go into like the PS5 or the Xbox Series X and stuff, they're still touting 4K on top of everything.
My box has 8K,
like 4K.
Yeah, my box has 8K. That thing does.
There
8K.
you go.
That's an 8K system right there.
Yes, his lotion does 8K.
So that's. I love these facial expressions.
For the audio listeners, Frank has a lotion bottle sitting in front of the PS5.
Yes. Yes, we'll talk about it later, but that is the reason
No.
why my elbows are not ashy. All right.
Fair
But
enough.
like the first thing that always comes up with these new consoles is that they're 4K. The 60 FPS is like 3 things down the list or 4 things down the list.
Mm-hmm.
So like I still don't think companies are still doing the refresh rate. But when you look at PC, I guess PC is a little bit different. It's a different kind of climate compared to the PS4 or PS5 and the Xbox Series X. So I don't completely agree with that they're doing more refresh rate and because resolutions. I feel like because that's a bigger number, right? So somebody's gonna come into it and be like, oh, this is a 60 FPS game, but this is a 4K game.
Yeah.
Let's think
I
it's
mean-
4K.
I mean, in the sense of just like, if you notice recently, Final Fantasy VII is getting a 60 FPS boost. God of War, Last of Us, like all these games that we've played in the past are now starting to get FPS boosts. Given, yeah, they're getting up-resed into 4K, but a lot of people are noticing that, wow, this game looks a lot different, or plays a lot different, or is just crazy different because it's smooth. It's running at 60. It's not. There's no hitches or anything like that.
Seeing somebody that like sees a game at 30 FPS and then sees a game for 60 FPS, just seeing the shock in their eyes, just like, wow, this is what this game could run like. I never knew that games could run this well, and hopefully, Nintendo does what they need to do this. If they start selling these up-reses for like $20 a pop, because I could see them doing that. It's
And making it
Nintendo.
super limited. Like you can only get this up-res until March. Like, wait, what?
Well, hopefully we see, improvements in technology and hopefully, we get those super buttery smooth frame rates. But until then, Frank, you want to hit us with the second article?
Yeah. So I have here our second article comes from gamesindustry.biz, and that is Square Enix taps Forever Entertainment for remakes by Brendan Sinclair. So this week, Square Enix has signed a deal with previous Panzer Dragoon remake studio to make remakes based on Square Enix Japan IP. This is just the one IP. This is a little confusing to read, but hear me out. Forever Entertainment will make more than half of the revenue from each remake. Forever aims to preserve gameplay but graphically overall said IP. It's not the craziest news this week, but so what I'm getting at is Forever is taking one IP from Square Enix and working on multiple remakes for that IP itself. But instead of, they're going to keep the same gameplay but graphically overhaul the IP. I don't think it's Final Fantasy personally, but what do you guys think they're working on? I have a list of games on here that is a possibility of them working on. Like I said, I don't think it's Final Fantasy, but what do you guys think?
Mario, what are you thinking?
I actually would hope that in some aspects, because I feel like it's a game that is lost to time. I'm not able to play it. I know it came out for, I believe, the DS at one point, but a series that I'm very interested in is actually the Chrono series, aka Chrono Trigger specifically. It's a game that has both Final Fantasy elements, but also has like not Dungeons and Dragons, Dragon Ball Z elements that I very much have always been like interested in, but never got a chance to play because, like I said, it came at a time where I was nowhere near interested in JRPGs or even had like DS at the time when I think they brought it over. There has been like mobile ports of it, but I've heard they're bad. So I'm hoping that like a full on like graphical overhaul, like almost like in the sense of last week when we saw the Brilliant Pearl, whatever the Diamond, whatever those are.
Shining Diamond, Brilliant Pearl, or something.
Where it's the same story, just up-resed and better looking, like new sprites and stuff like that. I'm hoping that I can get that as a new adventure for the Chrono series. Second shot up, I would obviously be Parasite Eve. I know everybody's interested in seeing that again.
One thing I'll say about Chrono Trigger: do not put new graphics in that game. Just up-res it. Put it like Octopath if they can. I want an Octopath kind of style for Chrono Trigger.
Keep that same like 8-bit look, but
Yeah, because that's something about Final Fantasy VI, about Chrono Trigger. That's what's so like great about those games, is that they're timeless. Like you can even play them now and they still look really, really good. But it's just what that art style is and what that art style does for those games. So I think doing it more of an Octopath style would be probably what I would want out of Chrono Trigger. And I think, I don't think they're gonna touch Final Fantasy. I think they've got Final Fantasy on lock at this point. I have thoughts about the other stuff, but when it comes to Final Fantasy, but are they? It seems like they're just going like the Blue Point method, right? Kind of up-resing everything, but keeping everything the same in a way.
Blue Point messes with it a little bit, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
They mess with it a little bit in Demon Souls.
They
A little bit.
Yeah, but they, like, for instance, when they did Shadow of the Colossus, they've definitely made it more modern controls. So if you are someone that has, played it originally, you have that control set, but obviously you have a new way where you play it differently.
Oh, did they actually add a second control scheme? Because what I've heard is like the controls are still bad in that game.
No, they totally changed it. They had 2 different settings for it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
That
the
makes me a
original
little bit
controls were
more
bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like for Demon Souls, it's they put some quality of life things inside the game, but the gameplay itself is still exactly the same. There's really no difference in there. It's just they put some quality of life stuff that a lot of new Souls games kind of have, or some Souls games should have that they still haven't put into the games yet. So, like, I would say I would go with Chrono Trigger, not Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross is not a great game in my opinion. I played it for a while. It was not that great, but I might get flack for that. I'm sorry.
Wow, just get us canceled again. Every week we gotta have a spicy take of a series, and someone's just gonna hate us for. There's that one, the one Chrono Cross fan that's out there is really gonna hit our email pretty hard on that one.
It's always me.
Yeah, because you have the hottest of hot takes.
Because you're so spiced up because of Demon Souls that like everything else just pales in comparison.
God.
Yes, it's the first time I've talked about Demon Souls since the first episode, I think, or even one of our practice episodes.
Yeah, it was a practice episode. The only other, sorry, go
ahead.
No, the only other one I was going to say was Dragon Guard, only because that has some ties to Nier Automata. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, that is it. That's all I want to say.
Fee, I know you like Dragon Quest. What do you think about this? Do you think it could be Dragon Quest?
Fee's shaking her head no.
I'm just shaking my head no. Man. That is a very good question. I like Dragon Quest. I've played 1, but it's not to the extent where I'm like, I know everything about Dragon Quest. Just because of my limited. So it's essentially the only specific game that I know, like off the top of my head when I think of like Forever Entertainment, is Phantom Doctrine, but that came out in 2018. So I don't think they're going to do anything with that at all. So you know what? I'm going to pass this because I don't have anything that could particularly go well with this particular conversation.
No, that's fair.
And I tip my hat to you all.
Which is why I brought a second question in with it, just in case this were to happen. How do we feel about remakes? Do we prefer them to new IPs or entries, or would we rather specifically just have brand new games altogether?
I have strong opinions.
Talk your shit.
So the only time I care about the concept of remakes is when the original games are not accessible. You can't play them in any way. So for like games that are on like older PlayStation consoles that aren't backwards compatible and you want to bring that to new audiences, yeah, sure, great. But, I think from a preservation standpoint, we should preserve these games, make them playable at this time, and make sure they're playable in the future. But I would rather have new games and new stories and more diverse perspectives in games than, the already trodden old games that are out in the world. Fee, you look like you have opinions.
Mm-hmm.
I do. One, you know what? I'm going to take a quick loop back. I agree that since it's become very popular, I think it might be Dragon Quest. I thought about it. I took 30 seconds while Sly was talking. And you know what? With the boom that they currently have, I could see, because they have so many IPs. Like, there's so many different Dragon Quests. It would make sense because there's they span so far back that they have so many options right now. And going to what Sly said, if I could specifically get a playable Resident Evil 4, I would be so happy because Resident Evil 4 is probably one of my favorite games, but good golly, can I not actually control my character because of the way that the camera moves, and it makes me sick. Like, not like, oh, like I'm really like I'm upset about it. No, it physically I get motion sick trying to play that game even when I was on the Wii. Like, I played it on the GameCube, worked okay, and then went to the Wii, got confused. And so I think having games like that, having the ability to make them more accessible for everybody, or just maybe try to fix some things and then make them graphically like pretty at this point, because Resident Evil 4 has a lot of potential. And I'm going with Resident Evil 4 because that's the first thing that came to my head. But I think that there are definitely things like Dragon Quest. Like, the games are really pretty for their time, and I think if they could bring them into 2021 and beyond, I think they could do really, really great things with it.
Because all the protagonists in those games are all in those individual games too, right? So it would be nice to read telling the stories. I know that on the eShop, they recently dropped every single one of the older games, but from their original standpoint, not so much with an up-res or sort of a new thing. So yeah, I could totally see them doing something like that. And I'm excited for potentially next year we might get a Resident Evil 4. So we'll see.
I will cry.
Yeah.
I guess
the rumor for Resident Evil 4 is 2023 for it to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime in the future, you'll get Resident Evil 4.
But
I'll take it with a mouse.
As long as what Fee would say, because those controls are terrible. As long as they get rid of tank controls, I will be happy.
It's not tank controls.
Put some respect on Resident Evil 4's name. Resident Evil 4's controls are fine.
Resident Evil 4, the game, is freaking awesome. It's one of my favorites. 2 is still my favorite one, but 4 is up there for me. It's like probably number 2 for me. I love that game.
Respect on Resident Evil 4's controls, okay? All right. I'm just playing. No.
Speaking of weird controls,
can be very fighty to
that transition, though.
Speaking of weird controls, you want to talk about the last article there, Frank?
Yeah, our final article comes from PC Gamer. A banana can be your next PC controller by Molly Taylor. So a recent patent from Sony indicates that their next controller is a banana.
Say the line one more time. I need to hear some emphasis.
A recent patent from Sony indicates that their next controller is a banana.
There's no whatever. Just whatever.
A recent patent shows that Sony is experimenting with using non-electrical devices as a controller, using cameras to indicate what buttons you are pressing. I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. This sounds like an accessibility dream.
Yes.
Because if you've ever went down the accessibility controller rabbit hole, it's nice that Microsoft has put out an accessibility controller, one that is very customizable and one that's very, you can do a lot with it. However, it's very expensive. And the pieces that you add to it are also very expensive. I remember joking around one time seeing a red button about yay big for $70, a red button that you would plug into this controller. And with Sony doesn't necessarily have an accessibility controller that you can use with their system. And I feel like this is their way of maybe saying, okay, instead of trying to charge people hundreds of, $70 here, $100 there for certain buttons or certain button placements, how about you use regular household items around you, and whatever's comfortable with you can be used however you want to. Sly, what do you think about this?
This is incredible depending on what they're looking at for pricing. Like you said, this is insanely wild to think that you could have whatever works best with your hands as a controller. And yes, the adaptive controller is amazing, but isn't it $250 for the base controller? And that's not even if you need additional attachments to it. And so being able to use cameras that can change the placement of buttons, I I have some mobility issues, and so like holding controllers can be pretty taxing. If I could have a controller that was like a squishy ball, that would be my dream. Like just
exactly
be
what
able
I
to
was
hold it
thinking.
in like my hands comfortably and naturally and be able to use like whatever part of my hand is functioning best to that day for a controller sounds like a dream. Like the fact that this might be a possibility is very exciting in my opinion.
Harv, you look like you got something to say about this.
No, this is great. This is great. This is it all comes down to cost, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, like what Sly was saying, because like $150 to drop on a controller, it is very accessible, but it's expensive, right? And when it comes to this, like also this is just a patent, so we don't know when this is going to happen or if this is even going to happen.
Yeah.
But if it does, like hopefully it's a little bit cheaper than the at least the I forgot what the Xbox controller is called that they have
The adaptive controller, I
adaptive
believe.
controller. That's it. Yeah, yeah. No, this is awesome. Accessibility, more accessibility to games, the better it is, because then everybody can play games. That's really where I stand on this.
Yeah. I mean, of course, with more companies working on more accessible items for consumers, the more, prices go down. Mario, do you have anything to say on this?
No, but I do love that I was told to keep it PG in the script. So that's
Yes, because I have another question for you guys. If you can use any inanimate object as a controller, what would you use?
Keep
And
it
I just say-
PG-13. You can give
Yes.
you get one F word.
You got to keep Mario for your inanimate object. Please keep it PG-13. If you want to, I don't know. It's just a guideline.
I mean, you never play the game General Joust? No, I'm kidding. That's it. That's all I'll say.
General Joust.
Oh, I remember that game.
No, I mean, it'd be hilarious. Obviously, well, not hilarious. I think it'd actually be more accessible if, like, you had something like if you're reading the whole thing was like you're reading a book, like a game about a book, and then you actually have an actual book or some other object that relates to the game itself. I think that would be interesting if we're able to adapt that in some aspects. I know that VR and the Kinect were doing that, but it was all just like you're motioning in it. I mean, it would be great if there was something that was tangible like this. If you're playing a gun game and you don't have a gun, but you have a banana, cool. You have two guns. It's as easy as that. So I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah, I don't see how this could be too crazy. If I had them here, I would show you. But I know on like the Rift controllers, like the Oculus ones, it works on cameras, so you can certain buttons you don't necessarily have to press them. As long as you're in proximity, it detects like if you're doing like a this motion or something. You know what I mean? So I imagine with
Bending
enough
your finger
IR,
like a controller.
yeah, and it does detect it before you even press the button. So I imagine it's doing it through the IR sensors on there, which is why I think this could possibly just be like a camera that just shoots a bunch of IR stuff, kind of like the Kinect, and just detects on like how your hands are moving and stuff. Harv, do you have an inanimate object you would use as a controller?
Bounce bar.
Mounds bar?
Yep.
That would make for.
I love that you brought up the mouse
You just had
bar.
For the audio listeners, he whipped out a Mounds bar out of nowhere.
Yeah, this man had it ready.
So Sly sent me almond joys and Mounds bars to me because I don't remember when I said this that I've never had these before. Apparently, when I was drunk, and yeah, so I want a controller that it's shaped as a Mounds bar.
It was during your drunk stream you did a couple weeks ago. We were talking about candy or whatever, and Hells mentioned almond joys, and you said, like, what the fuck is an almond joy? And I was so shocked because we had previously had a conversation, all of us, about like what candies are in Canada and the US and what the differences are. And I was like, how did this not come up in our conversation? So I had to send you some.
And now all the almond joys are gone. Now we're down to the Mouse bars.
Mhm.
Now we need to send everybody Smarties. That's what we need to do.
I want to wait. Smarties isn't like the chalky.
No.
Fuck.
No.
Okay, I was about to say
No.
I will send those back.
No.
I'll send those back, but I'll send them all broken.
There'll be a dust.
Just fucking Smarties dust.
Don't send
No.
dust.
No, don't do that.
No, guys.
Yeah,
no.
I'll have the ATF.
What is this
document
colorful
thinking it's
anthrax that you're sending across the border?
Why did anthrax not be white anymore? Why is it pink? All of a
Yeah,
sudden?
why is it colorful? Who died the anthrax?
Now that we've sufficiently derailed this conversation, I think that's all we have for the patch notes this week.
Yeah,
So,
not a crazy news week, but